now introduce our speaker. Bart is a former member of the School of Business faculty at Georgetown University and a visiting professor of business communications at the George Washington University. He served as the director of the Graduate Business Program in International Management at Oxford University. He has quite a bit of breadth and depth of experience in the business world and has held a number of senior executive positions as serving as CEO, COO, and CFO. He's a retired United States Naval officer and the owner and president of President Timm and Associates, a management consulting firm that he founded in 1987. He is a graduate with cum laude honors with departmental honors from Hiram College in Ohio and earned an executive MBA from the University of Notre Dame. Bart is quite a professional speaker, and it shows, and a member of the Professional Speakers Association and the Global Speakers Federation. He serves on the advisory board for the Garfield Institute for Public Leadership and on the board of visitors for Hiram College. Please help me welcome Bart Timm. His title of his speech is "It Takes a Lifetime to Prepare an Impromptu Speech." It takes a lifetime to prepare an impromptu speech, Bart Timm.
Hopefully you'll be able to see this okay, in lieu of not having an overhead. Thank you for that introduction, especially since I wrote it. Although I'm reminded of the time that I was giving a speech and a person introduced me and said, "I'd like to introduce you to a guy who had made $2 million in the last 5 years in real estate." And I walked up and I said, "Well, first of all, a few corrections I need to make here. First of all, it wasn't $2 million, it was $10 million, and it wasn't real estate, it was in land development, and it wasn't a profit, it was a loss. And it wasn't me, it was my brother." So tonight, I want to talk about impromptu speaking. I had a quote from Mark Twain, said, "I didn't have time to write a short letter, so I wrote a long one instead." And he's talking about the fact that it takes a lot of time to distill words down to a little bit, whether we're writing a letter or whether or not we're speaking. And impromptu speaking is essentially the essence of that, taking as much as you can into a very small period of time. And we practice that on a regular basis in Toastmasters with table topics. Mark Twain also said, "It usually takes me more than 3 weeks to prepare an impromptu speech." It takes me more than 3 weeks to prepare. Now, what is impromptu? The Oxford English Dictionary said that something that's impromptu is unplanned or unrehearsed. So how can it take 3 weeks to prepare something that's impromptu? Well, unplanned or unrehearsed. I mean, that seems like an oxymoron, a non sequitur. It doesn't fit together. And yet, that's what I want to talk to you about tonight. How do you prepare for an impromptu speech? The fact is that we deal with these sort of situations on a regular basis. Serena Williams. Right, so imagine that you are standing on the opposite side of the court from Serena Williams. I'd rather it be you than me, because she serves at 122 miles an hour. By the way, Roger Federer, his average is 119. She actually serves faster than Roger Federer does on average. And it's interesting, if you compare the fastest speeds of the best elite tennis players that are women, they are comparable to the best serving speeds of the men. Very interesting. So it's a sport where there does not seem to be an edge given to one gender or another. But imagine you're standing across from her getting ready to serve. What do? I'm crossing like this. I'm protecting myself. I'm probably standing sideways so I don't get hit. How do you prepare for that? That's an impromptu moment. What you know for sure is that she's going to serve the ball. You know she's probably going to serve it very hard. You know she's probably going to serve it someplace where you're not, or where you have the least possibility of getting to it. So how do you prepare for that? You practice. Right? You stand there day after day with somebody smacking the ball as much as you can. You ever watch little kids play or tennis high school players or college players? They hit thousands and thousands and thousands. In Serena's case, she's probably up to the millions by now of balls that she's hit because she has to practice. Because her sister's serve is almost as fast as hers. The other people she plays, the same thing. And the only way you get better is by practice, and it's the same thing with speaking. If, for example, you were to face a fastball player in baseball. Ted Williams, by the way, 1941 was the last player to hit over 400. Think about that, how long ago that was. 1941, the start of the Second World War, was the last time an American baseball player actually hit over 400, which meant that 6 out of 10 times they didn't get on base. So failure is a way of life for them. But it's about practice, it's about getting better. If you read about Ted Williams, you'll find out that he was an absolute student of the game. He studied every pitcher. Because as in the case of Serena Williams, at 122 miles an hour, you have 0.46 seconds, 0.46 seconds from the time the ball strikes your racket to the time it's in front of you. A half a second. And if you aren't prepared for that, then you aren't prepared. You're in a world of hurt. The same speed is almost the same for a fastball coming in to a pitcher from 60 feet away. And if you haven't prepared, if you haven't studied the pitchers, if you don't know what motion leads to what, you're going to be totally unprepared when they throw a slider or a fastball or whatever, a curve. If you don't know what you're doing, you have to prepare. These are impromptu moments, but you can prepare for them by practice. And my favorite, Lionel Messi, I think is going to go down in history as the greatest soccer ball player ever. I personally think he's just phenomenal, especially since he started young. By the way, when he was a kid, he was told to not even think about sports because he's a little guy. He's only 5'6", and people said you'll never make it on the soccer pitch, but he's worth millions. I also like this picture because you can see the goalie there. So Lionel Messi knows he's going to kick the ball. The goalie knows he's going to kick the ball, but neither one is certain where the other one's going to be. How do you prepare for that? Practice. As a goalie, you have people kick balls at you all day long so that you get to the point where you see where the person's foot's going and you have some idea of which way the ball's probably going to go, whether it's going to go up or down or to the right or to the left, however it's going to happen. As the person kicking the ball, you judge the goalie, you know what way they tend to go, whether they tend to jump right or left, what they're going to do with those arms, and so you can be prepared ahead of time. So although it's impromptu, it's really not, it's prepared. A chess match, Boris Spassky and Bobby Fischer. The last time an American won in that course. You know how Bobby Fischer prepared for the chess match against Boris Spassky? He swam laps underwater. You sit there and go, wait a minute, what the hell does that have to do with chess? But he realized that chess matches at this level are long distance things. It's like running a marathon. You're sitting there for a long time, hours. And if you don't have oxygen flowing to your brain, after a while you start to get tired. You can't think as clearly. So he practiced deep breathing, getting his oxygen and swimming underwater so that at the end of the match he would be as fresh as he was. And he won. Very novel. There are creative ways to do this. And Vince Lombardi, one of the greatest football coaches ever, his plan was to come into a game with a game plan and to run the plays. People would say, well, that's not how we play the game. I mean, you run a play, the other team does something, and then you adjust. And he said, let them adjust. I have a plan. I'm going to do this. Someone said, but how do you win like that? He said, it's really difficult to be aggressive and successful if you're confused. Keep it simple. He said, my players know what they do. It's simple. We do it well, we do it repeatedly. And that's how we succeed. And then party time, the interview. How do you get ready for an interview? Yeah, there are ways to do that. I have a company called thebestresume.com, and I help people prepare for interviews, prepare their resumes, cover letters, and I sit down and I ask them a series of questions. You know, I don't ask questions like, what color are you? Because that isn't really helpful, but I'll ask them, what are the three greatest strengths? What are their weaknesses? My greatest strength is intelligence. What else? I don't know. Yeah. And so you walk people through this so that when they ask the question in the interview, it's like bam, bam, bam. They know what they're doing. They know themselves. They're prepared. You can do that. Impromptu speaking is the same way. So let me start by giving you some advice. First thing is get a coach. Okay? Not a coach bag, but a coach. And this club can be a coach for you. We will give you feedback. As Fred said, we'll give you positive feedback and helpful feedback that says you could have done a little bit more of this, a little bit less, could have made your gestures a little bit bigger, you could have raised your voice, lowered your voice, and so on. Work on timing. We have timed speeches. Try to get your normal speech to 1 to 2 minutes, because a 10-minute speech is just 5 of those. All right, 5-minute speech is just 5 1-minute speeches. And if you can practice 1 to 2 minute timing when you stand up for table topics, you'll be 1 to 2 minutes. When someone asks you a question, you'll answer in 1 to 2 minutes. You won't be one of those people that go, oh my God, I wish I hadn't asked him. I didn't want to know that much. And so get your timing down to the point where it's helpful. Listen to the question, number one. So if you want to know how to answer an impromptu question, listen to the question. Most people are so busy thinking about what they're going to say in advance that they miss the question altogether. They misinterpret the question. Take the time to think about it, to listen about it. Second thing is take the time to think. Take a pause. Just think for a minute. Let it seep in, and our minds are incredibly quick. 1,000,000 times faster than Serena's ball. 1,000,000 times faster than a pitcher. Our brains are going, they're searching for everything that's in our database up there. And if you give it time, you will be surprised what comes out of your mouth, as opposed to just the first thing that comes out of your mouth. Give your brain time to think. Think in threes. All right, so I'm going to give you 3 different ways to think about answering an impromptu question. The first is an opening, a body, and a close, which is where most good speeches are prepared. There's an opening, and then there's a body where I explain everything, and then there's a conclusion. It's a nice logical progression, an easy way to speak. So when you're asked the question, think to yourself, okay, what's the first thing I want to say? I want to talk a little bit about this, and then I'm going to close this way. Very sound way to move forward. The second is think in threes, and that's point, counterpoint, and contrast. So you're asked a question, you say, it's a good point. And if I understand the point correctly, it is. But if I were to think of the opposite of that, why we would not want to do that, I would suggest this. So I understand you want to build a wall. Here's why I don't think we should build a wall. And let me contrast those. The benefits of building a wall are this, because it gives me control. The disadvantages that it keeps people out. And so you contrast those, and you come across as someone that really is good at thinking on their feet and can deliver something. Thinking in threes: premise, argument, and conclusion. So you say, okay, the premise is that building a wall, and I'm just impromptu piggybacking off of what Michael offered. You know, the premise is that we think it's a good idea to build a wall. All right? The argument in favor of that is, the argument against that is, and in conclusion, I believe that this is what we should do. So you state the premise, you state the argument, and then you conclude. A very quick way, and you can do this in 1 to 2 minutes fairly easily. And then the third is ethos, pathos, and logos. Aristotelian thinking, Aristotelian logic, is one of the first and one of the brightest. Ethos stands for ethics or morals. Pathos is emotions, feelings. It's where empathy, sympathy, pathological come from. Logos is logic or thinking. It's logical. And you can use these in any order. You could say, well, from an ethical standpoint, I'm not sure that that's a really good thing to do. However, I understand what you feel. I understand the fear that people feel about immigrants coming over here unfettered. But from a logical standpoint, perhaps this is how we should handle it. All right? Or you can start from logical, from logos. Logically, I understand that we want to control this. Emotionally, I understand that people are afraid. But morally, I think this is the right thing to do. But using ethos, logos, and pathos allows you to construct an argument very quickly in your brain and come across again as intelligent. So let me tell you a story at the end to finish of how important this is to think about it. Winston Churchill was coming up to give one of his last speeches at the Royal Albert Hall. He pulled up. His driver said, Mr. Prime Minister, we're at the Royal Albert Hall. Silence. He said, excuse me, Mr. Prime Minister, we're at the Royal Albert Hall. Nothing. Mr. Prime Minister, he said, excuse me, but I am busy preparing my impromptu remarks. He knew he'd be asked questions. He wanted to come across as impromptu, but he thought ahead of time what questions he was going to be asked, so he would come across as impromptu, but intelligent at the same time. You can do the same. It's a matter of training, it's a matter of timing, it's a matter of practice. Toastmasters was one of the best ways to get that. I know of very few places where you're going to be asking impromptu questions and be timed and get feedback. But you could do this at home for yourself. Listen to the radio. When a subject comes on that interests you, get a timer, time for a minute and a half. If you want to videotape yourself, you can. Give yourself feedback. But come join us instead, and we'll give you the feedback. Mr. Toastmaster.